ASMR has been in the online community for about a decade now. It's been steadily growing in popularity within the last couple of years. In fact, if you search up A in the YouTube search bar, ASMR will be the first suggested result. And so I found in my own interest to try and tackle the science and psychology behind this unusual phenomenon. Now, this research is going to be especially difficult, and that's because the research is still ongoing. Since ASMR only emerged recently, there's actually not yet enough concrete proof or evidence as to how exactly ASMR works. But with the help of a couple studies, I can come up with a pretty satisfactory theory as to how this natural phenomenon come to emerge with the daily lives of millions of people. Let's start in the beginning. How ever did ASMR become invented? Well, people have been experiencing ASMR before the term even was invented. Some proposed names such as brain massage, head tingle, or even auditory-induced head orgasm. In 2010, the term ASMR was finally cemented by someone known as Jennifer Allen, who wanted a professional way to discuss this phenomenon without sounding stupid. ASMR, I'm sure everyone already knows, stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. Autonomous, meaning self-governing, involuntary, uncontrollable. Sensory, pretty straightforward, senses or perception. Meridian, meaning a point of the highest development. And response, just response. However, just know that Jennifer was not a professional scientist. She just came up with the name, and the community accepted it for what it is. Just know that ASMR is not actually the official scientific term for this phenomenon. But for now, it works well enough. When people had only begun to experiment with ASMR on the internet, many videos were in poor quality, both in audio and video. It wasn't until binaural microphones like the Blue Yeti and 3DO became popularized when ASMR really took off. And yes, I'm calling it a 3DO instead of a 3DIO because it's a JoJo reference. When people began to experiment further, in the forms of even more types of ASMR triggers, longer sessions, more variety, and even roleplays. In just about a couple years' time, there was now a trigger suited for everybody. However, one major misconception people have for ASMR is that it's not ASMR unless you actually experience these tingles. It is exactly what the name suggests. It's not ASMR if you don't get a response. So just know that the next time you sit through an hour long of scratching sounds without feeling a thing, that's not ASMR. The process of ASMR consists of what everyone calls a tingle, though I don't like this term because it's not official. Some researchers call it an aesthetic chill, but for simplicity's sake, I'll just refer to it as a tingle for now. However, to define exactly what causes these so-called tingles, psychologists had to delve deep into the depths of the human brain to discover the results. Many have debated as to why we as humans experience these tingles. A biopharmaceutical scientist called Craig Richard stated that the feeling of ASMR is innate. It's always something that's been with us as soon as we're born into this world. He called this a, quote, tranquil, womb-like intimacy, much like a mother coaxing, caressing, and comforting her baby. Very reminiscent of ASMR creators. In a weird way, watching someone perform ASMR is like watching a parent giving personal attention to their child. While Richard's theory isn't exactly scientific, it is something that logically makes sense. Interestingly enough, Richard's research resulted in having clients reporting that a majority of ASMR consumers consume it in order to cope with anxiety, depression, or mental instabilities. This could mean that ASMR can possibly be used as a form of medical treatment, which is pretty bizarre if you think about it. However, this is when it gets tricky. An ongoing ASMR research attempted to use fMRI machines to scan the brain activity of humans when triggers are presented. An fMRI scan, for those who don't know, stands for Functional Magnetic Resonance Imaging. It's essentially a machine that creates a layout of the human brain after scanning it, producing a map of the brain in which specific parts of the brain lights up whenever stimuli are presented. In this case, psychologists tried to present patients with ASMR triggers, then looking at the brain map to determine which lobes of the brain lit up, indicating that they were active. But this becomes one of many problems. You see, the fMRI machines that we have now are way too loud. so it becomes almost impossible for patients to simulate the environment in which patients can reliably experience the ASMR without interference. Since this method didn't yield much fruit, researchers had to take a more classic approach in the form of surveys. Some statistics for you all. The most popular ASMR trigger is softly speaking, followed by hair brushing, then whispering. The majority of people that consume ASMR content do it for the sake of excitement, relaxation in the second place, and calmness in third. Surprisingly, 5% of ASMR consumers watch it for sexual arousal. So what conclusions can we draw from this data? Well, it is strongly implied that the process of receiving tingles is psychological. People want to achieve a certain feeling from ASMR. They don't do it because tingles feel good. However, surveys are still being conducted right now in order to uncover the science behind ASMR. If you would like to contribute, you can find the link in the description. So how is ASMR going to develop in the years to come? Well, in terms of sound quality, people will find ways to record in 8D audio, which will further enhance consumer immersion. For those who don't know, 8D audio is exactly what it suggests, being able to hear sounds from 8 different directions. But the biggest thing I can say about future ASMR is that there will be a point in which the sound quality will cease to improve, since it will reach essentially photorealism, much like video game graphics. By then, people would find more creative ways to create ASMR. You've probably noticed that ASMR videos these days often find really bizarre ways to trigger you. With such a creative community, I think it's definitely safe to say that ASMR has a bright future ahead of itself. And for the record, I do think that the case makes good sounds.